Now, let's go back to the Russia-Ukraine Peace Summit. Mick Ryan is a retired Major General and Senior Military Fellow at the Lowy Institute. Mick, good evening to you. Thanks for coming on the show. Can I just ask, what did you make of those extraordinary scenes in Alaska with Trump and Putin side by side?
Well, good evening. It was a very extraordinary scene as we saw Putin get off his aircraft, smiling, being welcomed to America with a flyover of US Air Force jets, a smiling, back-patting President of the United States. He'd already got everything out of that summit as he got off the plane, and it only got better for him as he was not sanctioned and as Trump rolled over to many of his demands about not getting a ceasefire in Ukraine.
So do you think then that Putin was the only one that really emerged victorious out of this meeting? Because, of course, Ukraine wasn't represented. It was really up to Donald Trump to represent Ukraine. Putin wouldn't agree to a ceasefire. Putin kept saying, it's about finding the root cause. He kept saying the root cause of this war. Well, I mean, we know who started this war, and I think that that's half of the problem.
Yeah, we all know what the real root cause of this war is. The root cause is Putin doesn't want a vibrant democracy on his border that can provide an example to the Russian people of a different form of governance from the kleptocracy of Putin and his thugs. So that wasn't addressed at all in the summit. The Ukrainians, as you said, were not represented, and the Europeans were not represented, and they now provide far more assistance to Ukraine than America does.
Mick, what happens from here, and can you see the idea of Putin and Trump sitting down with Zelensky in the weeks or months ahead?
Well, certainly that has been speculated about by Trump. Zelensky has said he is up for that. The Kremlin has said that was not discussed at the summit. Putin doesn't want that, but because that would give Zelensky a legitimacy that Putin does not believe Zelensky, or indeed the country of Ukraine has. We all know Ukraine is a sovereign, vibrant democracy. It needs to be represented. And if that means that Zelensky and Putin have to be in the same room to negotiate a ceasefire and then negotiate it into the war, that's what needs to happen.
Can I just ask you, Mick, about the theatre of it all? We mentioned this earlier. I thought it was fascinating that this flyover where we had US fighter jets as Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump, here it is right now, walking on the tarmac, and you can see the fighter jets up ahead. How much of this was a power play by Donald Trump?
I think quite a bit of it was, and actually I thought it was quite clever. A few years ago, Putin brought an Alsatian dog to a meeting with Angela Merkel of Germany because he knew she didn't like dogs. Well, Trump has upped Putin in that game and said, here's some stealth fighters and bombers that Russia could never build, and I'll show you. So I thought that was quite clever theatre, but overall, Putin went away from this summit very happy indeed.
Can I just ask you, Mick, about where Australia sits in all of this? And we know that this week the Prime Minister decided to join a range of countries, including the UK and France, and recognise Palestine at a summit that's coming up. We haven't had a meeting with the US President yet. There's been all sorts of speculation about AUKUS. Where is Australia in all of this, and how crucial is it for the PM to have that meeting with President Trump very soon and just get some better clarity on AUKUS and a range of other issues as well?
Well, first, it's important for Australia to show its solidarity with Ukraine. It needs to provide more aid. It hasn't provided any assistance in this calendar year, other than the arrival of tanks that were promised nearly a year ago. So it needs to show more solidarity with Ukraine, the people of Ukraine and the diaspora who live in Australia. But, the Prime Minister of Australia should be able to pick up the phone and have a conversation with the President of the United States. That no longer appears to be the case, either through lack of confidence or arrogance. And, this is a terrible situation. This is our closest security relationship. America provides an enormous amount of foreign direct investment in Australia. We need to rectify this situation quickly.
Absolutely. You just wonder what on earth is going on with our number one alliance right now. Now, look, speaking of, the leader of a US congressional delegation has encouraged greater defence spending by Canberra. This was from Democrat Senator Chris Coons. He said that there was strong bipartisan support in Congress for AUKUS, but said that greater efforts need to be made when it comes to defence spending. Mick, Labor has already said that it won't budge on defence spending. It's very adamant. But it doesn't leave us with many options, does it, to keep AUKUS afloat and also the alliance?
Well, unfortunately, at the current spending rate that this government has endorsed, you get AUKUS or you get the Australian Defence Force. You don't get both. And unless there is a significant uptick in spending to 3 or 3.5%, as I and many other Australian analysts have recommended for nearly a decade, you are going to see significant compromises in the lethality, the deployability of the Australian Defence Force. It's already hurting because of the amount of money going into the submarine project and blowouts in shipbuilding. That's only going to get worse if we don't see increases, significant increases in defence spending over the next 5 years.
Just lastly, Mick, can I ask you about something the ADF, the Australian Defence Force, announced recently, which seems to have gone under the radar? In the last 12 months, we actually had thousands of new people join the Australian military. It's bucked a long-time trend, and they're now saying they're on track to reach the number of 69,000 people by the early 2030s. So good news for defence, and we haven't had that for more than a decade, as I understand.
Well, they've got a lot of catch up to do because for the last 6 calendar years, Defence has not met its recruiting targets and it has not met the glide path for the increase in strength of the Australian Defence Force. That is good news, but to say we're going to meet our target by the early 2030s is too slow. We need to speed things up.
General Mick Ryan, thank you.
Thank you.